Hello, welcome, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everybody. Hope everyone's doing well. I'm losing track, 12 of the live Q&A. So this one is all about transplanting and interplanting. Hope everyone's doing well out there. It feels like summer has arrived. And we had temperatures in the 90s Friday and Saturday, so pretty toasty. But everything's going all right, kind of winding down the season. And just trying to crank away and getting all the modules filmed and edited. So ready for you guys for the course. Everything's been going great. So we'll get into questions about transplanting and interplanting. So get those questions in. Like usual, I'll hang around for an hour and a half, depending on how many questions are here. So I'll take general questions. Sorry, a little tired of this today. I'll take questions based on the module and then general questions at the end. And we'll take it from there. So get some questions in, and while you guys are jumping in the chat, is this chat working? Let's see here. Cool, there we go. All right, so before we jump into things, just like usual, just a huge thanks to our sponsor, Paperpot Co., for making this whole course possible. I know you're probably, I say this all the time, but seriously, if they didn't sponsor the course, I wouldn't make it, be able to give it away for free. So again, huge thanks to them. Please go check out everything they have to offer. On top of that, if you didn't get a chance to check out the last module, Module 12, which is what we're talking about today, Transplant Interplanting, there's also going to be a giveaway. So Paperpot's going to be doing a giveaway of several Jang seeders. So if you're interested in getting in on that giveaway, there's a link down in the description below, or you go to paperpot.co/Josh and you can enter the giveaway there. Very generous of them. I'm continuously amazed by their generosity and support of the farming community, not just in terms of like what they provide for the community, but also in terms of what they're actually giving to the community, like in terms of education materials, and also now some Jang seeders. So go check that out for sure. And then check out all the other stuff they have to offer. And, you know, I always appreciate if you let them know they're enjoying the course too, and thank them for making that happen. So anyways, giveaway down below, Jang seeders. They're pricey. One note about that though, I do want to say, which I didn't say in the module, is that they're out of stock right now, like everywhere. So they're going to be out of stock for a few months, I believe, is what Diego told me. So it is what it is. If you're looking for a Jang, you're going to have to probably wait a little while. Those are all imported, so there's only so many people that get them. But just to let you guys know if you're looking for one. And the next module will be about direct seeding. So I'll go through using the Jang seeder and all my settings and how to actually do it and how to work it when I'm going through the bed and all that kind of stuff. So transplanting and interplanting, let's get into talking about that today. Tiny House, welcome. Keith, Inger, good to see everybody in here. All right, wait for some more people to show up. So it is really interesting for me right now because I don't have anything in my nursery. Which is super weird at this time of year, but as you know, I'm winding down for the summer, and I should be done by end of June is sort of the goal, and the course should wrap up early July. So that's what's going on. It's just weird. I did my last transplanting, which I did for this module, the transplanting module, and then I also just put my my last seeds in the ground. I planted some radish, and you guys will see that on Thursday. So it's pretty weird, but it's also pretty exciting to take a break. And I recommend that everyone consider doing that at some point during the season. A lot of people naturally take breaks in the winter because things get covered in snow and ice and it's too cold. So, but for me, taking the summers off. All right, let's see here. My only experience growing strawberries is like a few plants for our family, nothing commercial whatsoever, and I wasn't super successful about it. And a lot of the fruit that gets grown here gets eaten by squirrels. So, like we have a bunch of raspberries just for our family, and our dog eats them too. So, Yeah, I don't have a ton of experience. I've never done it on scale. The Salanova I plant, is it a mixed seed of Salanova or do you make your own mix? So I use the foundation mix of Salanova. I think there originally were 8 varieties. I think there's 10 varieties now. So the foundation mix is a mix of 4, and you can just buy the mix. It's called foundation mix. It's a mixture of green sweet crisp, red sweet crisp, green incised, and red incised. So it doesn't have the like oak leaf and I don't remember what the other one is. And then there's like 2 or maybe even more varieties. So yeah, you can buy it or you can buy them separately. Either way, I think I've done it both ways. I think one time I tried to order them, they didn't have the mix, but they had all 4 varieties, so I just ordered the varieties and mixed them together. So yeah, I recommend that you use a mix and don't think about like how they're getting out in the field. So if you mix the seeds together and then you use those seeds to transplant or to do your soil blocks, then they're going in randomly in the soil blocks. And then when you transplant them out, they're going randomly. So when you're out in the field and you're harvesting, it's pretty much a random mix. And so when you get your bin together, if you cut like 10 pounds and put in a bin, it's all pretty much mixed up at that point too. So I've seen some farms that do like 1 row of each. It looks really pretty. I'm not that OCD to be able to do that. A lot of them are using paper pots, so I guess it'd be a little bit easier. But for me, I just mix all the seeds together and then everything gets mixed both in the soil blocks and out in the field. And then when I go to cut it, it's all mixed. Now, that mixture, as I said, is like a quarter of each of those varieties. So you could experiment and make your own mixtures if you want. I was using a mixture of Muir, Cherokee, Magenta for a long time. And that mix was like 70% Muir, 15% Cherokee, 15% Magenta. And so what I did is I just bought the seeds and then mixed them into like one container at the right ratio. And then I just used that, just like I was saying before. So it depends on what you want to do. If you're going for if you're growing head lettuce, for example, and you have a market for that, either at the farmer's market or at, the farm stand or the farm, whatever, or some restaurants want head lettuce, I would probably buy the seeds separately and just pick what head they want. Like if they want a green head or they want a red lettuce head. Green Sweet Crisp is like the biggest yielding one of all of them. So that one I'd probably recommend. But if you're like, what I'm doing is like a cut mixed lettuce, then that's the way I do it. I just use the mix. What's up, Gene? Yeah, Gene was just over today helping me out. Got hot today. Let's see. Hey, Big Mike. Charles Down gives a short transplanting video on Instagram. He doesn't really fill any holes with soil after transplanting. I don't think I ever watched Charles transplant. I don't really fill the hole. Like, I don't know if you watched the transplanting module, but I kind of just open it with 2 fingers. I put the plug in and just kind of like smooth the dirt around it. Kind of the hole is the same size as the soil block going in. Or does he dimple it? Does he dimple it with like a handle or something and then just plops them in? The other thing I want to mention, I love Charles. Awesome dude. I got to interview him before. He's an amazing farmer, gardener, and he's inspired me for a lot of things for sure. And it was interesting when I talked to Charles, this was a couple years ago, and interviewed him. It was interesting because, I think a lot of us look at other farmers, including maybe you guys are watching what I'm doing, or I'm watching what other people are doing, and you think that that's kind of what you're supposed to do. But you have to remember that context is important. So, Charles and I were chatting before we went on air. We were doing a live thing, and we started talking about some of the things going on. And, I was telling him about the temperatures, and I was like, oh, I can't do it like that. He's like, how warm is it? So it's cool. Like, I love when people are sharing like Charles, but Charles lives in the UK, very different weather than I have here, much cooler, and probably different amounts of precipitation and those sorts of things. So I think it will depend a lot on your context. I think if you live near Charles and you copied his methods, you're going to be really successful. But just keep that in mind. You can always try something if it's something that Charles does or I do or your friend does or someone else on Instagram or YouTube, it's good to try it out. Like, but don't just convert your whole farm over to whatever system you want to try. Do like one bed or do a part of a bed. Make sure you do like a control. So if you do like half a bed one way, half a bed another way, and then see what happens. One way will work better. Maybe one way won't. And then you're not like, screwing yourself over the whole season. So I say this because, not to pick on you at all, Mike. I'm just saying I fell into this trap early in my first season or two when I was just copying what everybody else was doing and having issues and not knowing why they was having issues. So you have to remember everybody's context is different. And same thing with like spacings. I think for like in this context here, we're talking about transplanting. We're talking about certain numbers of rows and certain spacing between plants. Those can change for you, right? Like you might like them wider. You might like them more narrow. I changed, like for lettuce, I realized that 4 rows doesn't work for me in the wintertime. It holds too much moisture in there and I was having issues with leaf drop and other things. So I spaced it out more. And what I noticed was that when I did space it out wider, the yields weren't really any different because the heads just got bigger. That's one of the beauties about Salanova is that unless they bolt, right, when they start to stretch out, get tall, they get bitter, they try to flower and go to seed. They generally will just keep getting bigger. That's pretty crazy. So that's one of the things that they sort of designed with that breeding program to get those Salanova seeds. So, yeah. Long answer to your question, Mike, but I think it's always important to remember that because it's great that people are sharing information like myself, but it doesn't always work for everybody. And so I always say like, this is what works for me, but it may not work for you. I agree. And so I know a lot of people are asking me about the Salanova mix and why I switched because I was growing that other mix for a long time. And so that mix is great for me because I'm selling to restaurants. It just looks awesome. Like it looks great when they plate it. It looks really fancy. The restaurants I'm selling to, they're not using it for like putting on burgers and sandwiches and stuff. They're making salads and sides and stuff with it. So that makes more sense. Now, if you are selling to places that are making, are making burgers and sandwiches and stuff like that, and they want like bigger, thicker leaf lettuce, then, some places like head lettuce because they can get like a much bigger leaf and it's not cut up and small. But the restaurants I'm selling to love it because it's like all washed and ready to plate and it looks pretty. So that's why I switched to it because that's what I was selling to. So anyways, and the beauty is you can pick some of those varieties and grow them as head lettuce. And one variety that's great is Mir is a great head lettuce too, especially because it grows great in the summertime. So one thing you can do, and this definitely relates to the module because I was talking about interplanting, but also like filling in beds that may have inconsistent germination or low yields, fill them in with something like Mir, right? Like just get a good head lettuce that works well and just start some every so often in your nursery, maybe whenever you're starting lettuce, and set those aside. And then when you have holes, you can come back in and fill them in. And like if you're going to the farmer's market and 1 week you have 30 extra heads of lettuce, just bring them, people will be interested. Hey, Daniel, thanks for coming by. Thanks, Pamela. Yeah, there's a reason why everybody grows it. Like it's super popular. It has great yields. It looks awesome. It germinates well. Yeah, so, and everyone's saying this, yeah, and the other good thing about I've said this in plenty of times, both throughout the last 3+ years on my channel, but also throughout the course, is the way your farm looks is important. And not in a superficial way, but in the way that you're going to be excited when you go out there. When you walk out to the field and you see all these pretty colors and everything's really organized, it looks awesome. Also, if you're marketing on Instagram or people are coming by your farm, pictures for your website, like if it looks cool and like looks tidy and looks professional and colorful, people are going to want to buy your food. So it's it's important to make your stuff look good, in my opinion. Nice, Bonnie. Yeah, the weird thing is now that I've just been growing Salanova for like a year and a half, I'm just getting sick of eating it because I'm not gonna like go buy lettuce if I grow lettuce. So that's been my own struggle, but I should just plant a few other things once in a while. So Kyle, I'm going to talk about this in a future module, and that's not related to this module today. Nice. Yeah. There's not really much of a difference. Just the difference in harvesting. Hi, Tiny House. Yeah, so in the module, I go through all the interplants. So I would definitely go through that because I'm probably going to forget some now. Yeah, I go through all the ones I've tried. Lettuce and green onion is good. Pretty much anything sort of quick growing alongside a tall crop. So if you're doing a long-term tall crop, like, if you're planting tomatoes or cucumbers or peppers, things like that you're transplanting and they take like a long time to get big. Well, cucumbers grow pretty fast, but peppers and tomatoes take a little while. I always like to plant something on the sides of those, at the same time. So have like lettuce ready to go in there. I did lettuce with cucumbers. That would probably also work with peppers. Peppers and beets worked really well. Those are some of the interplants that I really enjoy doing. So those were planned. So I had separate soil blocks ready to go for that interplant to time out right with the tomatoes or peppers or whatever. But the other thing you can do is direct seed stuff on the side. So you could be direct seeding things like radish or arugula or like some other baby greens. You could like get 1 or 2 rows on either side and and then harvest those out before the tomatoes or peppers or cucumbers get too big. So one thing I struggled with the interplanting with my farm was because my walkways are so narrow, it got really tricky. If you go back and look some of my videos from like probably this time last year on the farm, there's definitely like it's hard to walk through there, just because the interplants there's heads of lettuce next to cucumbers and beets next to peppers, and it kind of just like spills into the walkway. So keep that in mind too. Let's see, what else did I do? Green onion and lettuce is probably the best combo if you're going to be doing lettuce for sure. Oh, use a dibbler. Yeah, that's what I remember seeing Charles do. Yeah. So the Salanova seed's expensive. Yes, they are expensive. And I don't remember what module I hit on this idea, but if you're growing commercially, okay, let me take a step back. I don't think it matters if you're growing commercially or not. Buy the best seeds you possibly can, because in the grand scheme of things, the seed cost doesn't really mean very much. And I remember buying like a certain cucumber seed. They were like 50 cents a seed. And I remember having this discussion with somebody, and they were like, that's crazy. They're so expensive. And I said, in the grand scheme of your farm, if you're buying, let's say 200 cucumber seeds, right? And you're saving, 30 cents per cucumber seed. Think about like that's pretty insignificant amount of cost in the overall picture of your farm. And you're going to get 3 times the yield on that specialty cucumber than you did in the sort of normal 10 cent a seed cucumber. So I don't really stress about seed costs. It's pretty small for me. I probably bought a few $100s worth of Salanova seed, like not this winter, but the winter before, and I'm still using it. So yeah, Salanova is expensive compared to other lettuce seeds, but the germination is pretty much 100%. They come pelleted, which is fantastic. And if you've ever tried to start lettuce seeds that are not pelleted, oh my goodness, lettuce seeds are so small. So for that reason, I do like using the pelleted seeds, and the yields are just incredible. Those varieties of Salanova were designed for market gardening, and they also grow them a lot in hydroponic systems too. You'll see they'll show up in restaurants and they're grown hydroponically. They look kind of different, but the yields and the way they grow is that, as I was mentioning earlier, as they start to grow bigger, they don't really like get taller. They kind of just add more leaves. So when you go to harvest it, you still get, unless you wait way too long, you just get more of that leaf size. So to me, it's totally worth it if you're trying to go for yield. I don't really stress about seed costs, if that makes sense. Because, as I said, the expensive seeds give you a better yield. So for me, one of my biggest concerns is labor and time. And so if I can do the same amount of work and get 2 times or 3 times the yield, I'm going to pay a little bit extra for those seeds. So hopefully I made my point with buying pricier seeds, but it can make a huge difference for the overall yield of each crop. Thanks, Bonnie. Yeah, as I said in that module, I try to transplant as much as I possibly can. And one thing I think I talked about was beets, because I really have struggled with direct seeding beets. I know a lot of people do and like have no problem with it, but I wasn't getting consistent germination. I wasn't getting like good healthy plants and just really good stands. I'm sure if I kept at it for a while, but I know a lot of people have switched to transplanting beets because beets can be very profitable. Like you can get a lot out of one bed. And so what I want to do is I want to make sure, like I keep saying with small farming, you want to make sure that every bed is completely maxed out. So you want to make sure that you have the exact density of the crop that you want in the bed so that you're maximizing that yield. And transplanting does that for me. And it also gives me a jump start because those plants are 3 or 4 weeks old when they're leaving the nursery going into the ground. That's 3 or 4 weeks I could be growing something else in that bed. So I try to transplant. If I can transplant it, I'm going to transplant it for the most part. There's some things like I can't transplant carrots. Those have to get direct seeded. There are some other crops too. Radish, like I just seeded some radish, which I don't usually grow, but one of my restaurants has a radish dish on. He's a friend of mine, so he's like, "Can you grow radish?" I'm like, "Yep, sure, no problem." But stuff like that. Otherwise, I'm going to transplant it. Lettuce, obviously like cucumbers, peppers, tomatoes, green onion. And pretty much anything I can, I'm gonna transplant it. Hey Kevin, so Kevin, I get this question this is not a question for this module. Sorry, Kevin. Sorry. I'll take general questions at the end, as I said. I always get sucked into just answering all the questions, so I'll come back to that one after we've done talking about transplanting. Yeah, Daniel. So, there's some crops that people say like, "Oh, I've never heard you transplant those." Like, yeah, you can transplant just about anything. As I said, like carrots, no. Radish, no. Well, I guess you probably could transplant radish, but that'd be a lot. Yeah, I always transplant cucumbers. Squash. You can transplant anything, except you just be careful with the cucurbits because their root structure is very delicate. So. I think I talked about this in the soil block module. I can't remember, but yeah, make sure that you're being gentle with the roots because if you damage them, they cannot transplant well. But absolutely, and if you really want to get a jump on cucumbers, you can start them like in a small block and then pot them up into a bigger pot and have like a big plant going out, like what you have with tomatoes. And if you're coming out of late winter, early spring, and let's say you have something else in your tunnel and you want to get another couple weeks out of that bed to try to get another harvest, because for us, like things start accelerating pretty quickly here in like April, like everything that was planted over the winter, like sort of like comes into play like right away. If I'm having it in the nursery like another 3 weeks, that's again more time. This stuff's in the bed that aren't in there. So I'm a huge fan of transplanting whatever I can get away with because it just allows me more flexibility and more time to have things growing in the ground. Oh, nice. Basil. I haven't grown basil in years. Basil's a killer crop. Can be for sure. All right, so as I wait for a couple more questions to come in about interplanting and transplanting, so Module 12, I just want to take another minute to thank our sponsor, Paper Co. As I mentioned at the beginning of the Q&A, they make the whole thing possible, this free course, to be able to make and give away for free. So I really do want to thank them, and hopefully you guys are letting them know you appreciate it as well. But in addition to all the stuff they do to help me with this course and the great tools and equipment they sell, they're also going to be doing a giveaway of several Jang seeders. That's right, several Jang seeders. So if you're interested in entering the giveaway, there's a link down below. You can also go to paperpot.co/Josh and enter over there. I don't know all the terms, but they are listed on there. And please go do that. So I'm just blown away. They just continue to amaze me with their generosity for the farming community. So definitely go check that out. Just FYI, if you are looking for a Jang seeder right now to purchase one or to enter the giveaway, they're out of stock, I think, everywhere right now. They're all imported. So if they're out of stock, they're out of stock. So I don't know. They're coming back soon-ish, but just give you guys a heads up if you are looking for one. Also, I didn't mention this at the beginning of the module, but the next module, which I did say, is going to be about direct seeding. There's also a kit that Diego set up that's the Jang seeder plus the rollers that I use on a regular basis. So there's 3 rollers that I use, and he's going to sell that as a kit. So again, more cool stuff that they're offering out there, which I think is just so cool. All right, what other questions do you have about transplanting and interplanting, or are you ready to get on to general questions? One other thing I want to mention, which I was talking to Gene about today, the gritter, for example. Another thing that I realized about standardizing, I talk about standardization all the time, about bed length in terms of drip tape and row cover and insect netting and tunnel size and all that stuff. But one thing that was really handy about switching over to the gritter was it standardized that process as well. And I mentioned in the module that, like, if you have someone training, right, you have someone coming new to the farm or you have employees, you can say, all right, grab that gritter and transplant it out. But the other thing I realized at Raleigh City Farm was that we often had multiple people transplanting into a bed at the same time. And when we were using the tape measure, it would get really confusing if someone started transplanting, let's say, a quarter of the bed, and then someone hopped in halfway. They're like, oh, did you start on the foot or the half foot or the 8 inches or the 4 inches? Like, it just got crazy. So when you lay down the gritter, you know, it's very easy for people to understand how to do it. And if someone jumps in halfway, or someone, like, you know, has to take a break or go to the bathroom or get some water or whatever, and the bed's not finished, like, anyone can hop in and finish it. So I love that kind of stuff. So it was another huge benefit of being able to space things out and just, like, it's like a no-brainer kind of thing. And also for me, even though I've transplanted, I couldn't even tell you how many beds, if I'm using that versus, like, the tape measure, there's just no thinking, and it just sort of takes that out of the equation where I could focus more on the podcast I'm listening to, or I'm talking on the phone to somebody or whatever, or just allows me to daydream and think about what I need to think about. So whatever can simplify things, big fan of. All right. You guys done with transplanting, interplanting questions? I guess this is a transplanting question. Over-the-counter pain relief for the day after transplanting hundreds of plugs. Ibuprofen is my go-to. Or a glass of whiskey, depending on what you're into. All right, let's see here. All right, let's get some general questions in now. Transplanting beets able to cluster plant. Okay, I didn't mention this. Totally forgot. So in beets in particular, if you've ever planted beets, the seed looks kind of funky. It's like a cluster of seeds, because it is a cluster of seeds. So when you plant them, if they're into soil blocks or into the ground, you'll often get more than one seedling more than one seedling per soil block or per spot when you direct seed it. And that's totally common. So one thing I've done, should have said this in this module or in the soil block one, is that if there's more than 2 plants in a soil block, I will pull out the third. It's usually between 1 and 3 is what I get per soil block. I use Red Ace. I always get 1 to 3. So I will go 1 or 2 beets per soil block, but if there's a third seedling, I will carefully remove that without damaging the other 2. I noticed that if there's 2 in a spot, they'll do fine. If there's 3, that none of them grow large enough. So keep that in mind too. And I just do that as I'm transplanting. So like as I'm holding the soil block, as I'm putting them in the ground or putting them on the soil, I'll just, I'm obviously holding it. So I look at it. And if there's a third one, I'll just pull it out there. So I just want to mention that. So bonus for everyone coming up to the Q&A session, you get to pick that up. I think that's what your question was about. Oh, Jesse's on another level with interplants. He has no limits to that. If you guys don't know, assuming if you're watching this, you know who Jesse Frost is, Farmer Jesse. One of the main reasons he went not this season, last season when he got to his new property, he switched to 4-foot wide beds, was mainly just so he could interplant like crazy. So he's out of control with that. So you'd have to hit up Jesse. I don't think anything's weird on his farm anymore. Yeah, so the beet cluster question. As I said, if I have more than 2, I see that none of them grow large enough to the size I'm looking for. So I limit it to 2 per soil block. Any benefits that would cause you to want to use living pathways like Jesse? Yeah, I don't want to do it. I've been to Jesse's place a few times. It looks unbelievable. It's really cool. I think Jesse still has a lot more experimenting to do with it. It is more maintenance. It is one more thing you have to deal with on a regular basis. He's constantly mowing those walkways. So there is that. There are a lot of biological benefits for sure, because you have a lot more diversity going on. One of the other things that's different with Jesse's farm is that his compost that he gets is very, has a lot of carbon in it. It's very wood chippy or mulchy. And so I think he's fine. Like, I get a lot of benefit from my wood chips in the walkways because I think that adds a lot of fungal life to the soil, but I think he has plenty already. He's also doing a lot of compost teas and slurries and stuff too to increase all sorts of diversity. So they're awesome. They're really cool. I think they can get out of control quickly. I don't think he's still experimenting with them. I haven't talked to him about it recently, but when I was there, he was looking for different tools that aren't available yet. He's using a little electric mower to push through there. Obviously with my walkways being 12 inches, there's no way I'd be able to do that because his mower kind of is the right, it's a little bit smaller than it needs to be. He has to make 2 passes on each walkway, but it's another thing to manage, which I don't know. I don't know if the benefit's worth it, but Jesse loves it. It does look super cool though, I have to admit. It wouldn't work in my system right now for sure. Not with my skinny walkways in particular. And so if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, living pathways, he has grass and other things that are whatever's growing around there, he allows to grow in the pathway. And he treats that another thing that he's trying to keep alive. So the other thing with Jesse is that which I mentioned in the transplanting video, if you want to kneel next to the bed or you want to straddle it, Jesse always kneels. So I think he much prefers to have the grass there than to be on wood chips. I think it's another reason why it's beneficial for him. Obviously, with 4-foot beds, you can't really straddle them. Well, you cannot straddle them or jump over them. It's a nightmare. So it's a different sort of approach. I haven't tried this. Jesse made a video on No-Till Growers about that. So if you're interested to hear what Jesse has to do, tried with that, go check that out. It's a couple weeks ago, I think. Hey, Mayfield. Let's see here. Oh, back to Kevin's question because I skipped over Kevin. So Kevin, picking the outer leaves versus cutting lettuce. So again, this is a Charles loves talking about picking the leaves off the sides of the lettuce. Again, I think this is contextual because generally, especially in the warmer months from May through October, which is most people's main season where I live, that's not going to fly because if you don't harvest it when it's ready, a week or 2 later, it's bolted. So that's a big difference because it doesn't get nearly as hot where Charles is. So again, this goes back to that conversation we're having at the beginning about watching what other people do, giving it a try, and then seeing if it works, experimenting with different techniques and styles, and then you'll figure out what works for you. But for me, when I'm growing lettuce in the warmer months, when it's ready, 1 cut, it's done. Because I've tried, I go through and cut it, and I clean up all the leaves like I usually do in the shoulder seasons in the summer, around the bottom of the plant, and it just bolts immediately. So I generally, unless it's the winter time, I don't even bother with a second cut. I just try to get the maximum yield. And because my season's so long here too, I can just keep planting. I can get so many flips in the same bed. So I don't bother with that picking the leaves off of the side method. I know Charles loves it, and I know a lot of people have tried it or haven't tried it and then just talk about it because I've been asked about that several times. So if someone wanted to start selling compost at their farm, what advice would you give? I have no idea. I have no idea. You have so much compost that you can sell it. I would start a composting business. I don't make that much, so I couldn't imagine trying to sell it. I don't know what the laws are about compost. I don't know where that falls into the agriculture rules. So I would probably check legally with your state or county and ask them. But if you have that much compost, like, that's awesome. You probably make more money on compost than you would on veggies. I keep telling people, if you want to be in the ag space, if you want to be in or around small scale farming, you don't have to be growing the vegetables. There's always other things going on around the industry that you can participate in. And a great analogy here is like the gold rush from the 1800s. Like, there are all those people that were out west trying to get gold. The people that were making the most money were the people selling tools and equipment and supplies and those sorts of things. Not that there weren't some people getting rich with finding gold, but there was a lot of ways that you could be part of the whole thing and still make a good living. And there are so many places where compost is not readily available, that's good, that's decently priced, it's free of pesticides and herbicides and stuff like that. And there's more and more small scale farmers that are in demand. So if you're considering it and you're good at it and you have the way to bring in the inputs, like, I would push towards making that your, like, one of your main things. Just keep in mind that, like, making compost, Gene's chiming in with this too. Yeah. Good compost is really hard to make in volume. You need a lot of materials. You have to be constantly checking it. If you're doing it in windrows, you probably need machinery. You're checking temperature, you're checking moisture. The biggest thing is, like, if you've ever made compost, you can layer in all the materials that you have and you come back a few days later and it's like half the size. So you have to bring in a lot of material. So where do you get that material, how you transport it, where you store it. And then there's issues once you get into scale about, like, leaching, right? So, like, when it rains, where does the runoff go to? Does it stay in your property? Does it go in your neighbor's property? Where does it go into another thing nearby? So there's a lot of questions about that, for sure, about commercial compost. I would probably, one person I recommend to check out is Earth Care Farm. Jane's incredible. And so I would check out what they're doing. She's pretty cool. I bet you could probably message her and ask her some questions too, because she inherited that farm from her family. They've been there for like 40 years and they make and sell compost. That's a big part of their operation. But they also have a farm. So there are people out there doing it, but make sure, the other part of it is, like, yeah, we all like making compost, but, like, is it worth your time? Because it does take a lot of time to do it as well. So hopefully I gave you more questions to think about. I don't know, like, legally and all those sorts of things, but yeah, inputs are important. You're going to need a lot of inputs. So it's more than, like, throwing your veggie waste from the kitchen in there and maybe some stuff off the farm. Can interplanting work better in greenhouse gas emissions for indeterminate? I don't think I understand your question, Daniel. The main thing with the tall plants, like indeterminate tomatoes and stuff like that, is that I will use the interplant early before they get big. So I'll put out, like, lettuce next to cucumbers, for example. When I transplant the cucumbers, I put lettuce in as well. And so by the time the lettuce gets big enough in, 4 to 6 weeks, then the cucumbers are tall. So then you can harvest out the cucumbers or harvest out the lettuce, and then the cucumbers kind of take over. Or same thing with tomatoes, so stuff like that. The problem is, if you just keep letting the understory or the inner plant go, is that it'll eventually get shaded out and have to compete with the bigger plant. So that's where I think the issue comes into play. But I think when they're small, it's a great way to get an extra half a bed or 2/3 of a bed out of that while the other crop is still just growing up. Thanks, Pierre. And yeah, there's definitely waste handling. There's legality to some of that stuff, especially when you're bringing material onto your property. And as I said, how it leaches, and you have to have storage for water. There's a lot of stuff. I would probably reach out to another composting company if someone is willing to help you with that, because I'm sure there's a lot of legal stuff you have to deal with. Great question, Pierre Ann. So depends on your scale. Yes, saving your back is super important, because once that happens, I think most of us have had an injury at some point in the past, and we have back pain. I don't think if you don't say that, then you're probably a minority, especially as you get older. So, like I mentioned in the module, you have to be careful about about leaning over, because you can hurt yourself for sure. One thing I've noticed is that, like I was saying, make sure you separate the plants before you're leaning over, so you're kneeling, those kinds of things. If you're doing cell trays, I used to take all the cell trays out of the cell trays and put them in like a flat 1020 flat. I used to do that standing up, like at a potting bench. So you really limit the amount of time to be bending over. If you're on scale, I'd probably just recommend getting a paper pot transplanter. They're awesome. I've never used one, but there's tons of farmers out there that do. That is a huge back saver for sure, because you don't have to lean over at all to do that, just to set it up and then you just pull it. So that's probably good. Harvesting, there's some things you just can't get away with unless you're at a much larger scale and you can start mechanizing things like carrot harvesters and stuff like that. But generally it's going to be leaning over, which sucks. So one thing that's great if you're doing baby greens is the quick cut greens harvester from Farmer's Friend. Hopefully you've seen that before. It's like a blade that goes back and forth in the front with a bunch of brushes to throw the leaves into like a little catch thing in the back. Runs off a cordless drill. So that's great. If you're doing baby greens, definitely need one of those. I'll talk about that in the harvesting module. That's like not an optional tool if you're doing baby greens. That one's a huge one, because if you've ever harvested like spinach or arugula or baby kale and you're over there like with a knife, like forget it. Like that's really hard. You do get a more accurate cut and a bigger yield that way, but man, it's tough on your back. For those two things, those are the things I'd recommend is, separating the plants out and stuff without leaning over, and then just try to pick up your speed with it, and you'll get faster. And also, like, don't put yourself into the red. Like, if you're working and you're starting to feel pain, like, don't just keep pushing through, because you're just going to hurt yourself. So just be conscious about what your body can handle. I think that's part of it too. Make sure you're resting and drink a lot of water. Like, the thing is like about market gardening is it's very physical. It's demanding on your body. So take care of yourself. Try to eat decently. Drink a lot of water. I don't do stretching, but stretching would probably be a good idea. Those kinds of things. If you're in shape and more flexible, it will help a lot with market gardening for sure. There's other tools that help out, which I'll talk about. I'm going to do a tools module in not this week, but next week. A lot of the cultivating tools and stuff are like made to stand up, so you're not leaning over too. But for transplanting and interplanting, those are kind of my my thoughts on that. Oh yeah, the Arizona worm farm. Yeah, I've heard that place is incredible. Okay. Yeah, I mean, if you have compost that's easily accessible where you are, then literally there's no, in my opinion, if you're trying to run a commercial farm to make money, there's no reason to make it yourself other than like just processing the waste on your farm just so you're composting it and you can use that for something else. But if you have a source nearby, just buy from them if it's good, because they're going to do it better than, like, it would take me years to be able to make compost as good as, like, and working on it, putting in the time and buying the equipment to get close to what some of these guys are already producing. So it's really not worth it for me. But if you're trying to start an operation, like if you are somewhere where you can't get it, then you could have a huge market for it. And so if it's something you're interested in, that would be you could kill it with that. You can make a lot of money for sure. Oh, I can't find sources locally. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't hurt to start making your own compost. Like, that's the thing is, once you get it rolling, if you have inputs, just start making it, because even if it takes a year to make your first batch, once you get everything rolling, you'll constantly have a stream of compost. And it's pretty easy to find spots for it. But definitely think about the legality part of it for sure, because I just don't know. I can't really say. Oh, cool. Knee pads are awesome. Especially if you are like, on your knee, like squatting down, like on your knees for sure. I haven't gotten any, but that would probably be a good idea. Simeon, 100% buying potting mix. I talked about this in the soil block module. Yeah, 100%. If you can buy it, that's the thing. If you're in an area where it's not available and you have a lot of access to other ingredients that can make up a good soil mix, yes, maybe that makes sense. But for the most part, if you're in an area where you can get high quality soil mix, like definitely buy it, because you're gonna get a much better product. You don't have to worry about sourcing all the ingredients and mixing it up and all the time that you have to put into it. Like, just buy the potting mix and you should be happy. And as I said in that also, or maybe it was in the Q&A, that Jesse also made a video that was like, don't buy potting mix, or don't make your own potting mix. He said make sure you buy it, and he's in the same school of thought as I am with that. So definitely recommend buying it if there is good quality stuff available, for sure. I'm sorry, Pamela. Yeah, that I hear this more and more from gardeners and farmers, that there just isn't compost in their area, and so I'm hoping that more people hear this and start making compost commercially, because I think you could make a lot of money doing it for sure. Especially vermicompost. I've heard the amount of money you can make on vermicompost is kind of insane. There we go. A lot of advocates for knee pads. Nice. It's not really going to help with your back. Although, if it allows you to kneel longer and still feel comfortable, maybe that's less time that you are leaned over, like straddling a bed. If you can manage kneeling more because your knees are more comfortable, then maybe you're doing that less often with your back. For sure. But generally speaking, yeah, try to be conscious about how you're moving your body. I think, especially when I was younger, I would do things in stupid ways because I thought I was indestructible or whatever as a younger person. So as you get older, you're more conscious about certain movements, and you know that you could hurt yourself. And so, especially if you're doing them repeatedly, you're doing it more than one, you're doing it over and over again. You definitely want to be careful about that. Let's see here. So I'm just taking general questions now. Of course, if they're about transplant and interplant, that would be great. But otherwise, taking general questions. Hi, I'm scrolling up here. Kyle, how are you keeping your produce cooled after harvest? I have a small reach-in refrigerator. I will talk about the harvest station in a later module, but like I say in every live Q&A, if you go to my YouTube page, there's a search bar on the upper right, so you can search for things. So if you're looking for something specific, go type that in. I think I did one about my wash pack station somewhat recently, and so I show the cooler in there. So if you want to see that, go check that out. But it's just a 2-door reach-in cooler. It's not big, but it works fine for me, because everything I sell, I harvest it, it goes out the next day. All right, let's see. Hi, Pierre. Is there a good resource for plant spacing? Just get started. A vendor for the rollers, get them from PaperPot for sure. They're the sponsor of this entire course. They have all the rollers. So in addition to that, I mentioned this in the module coming on Thursday, but there's actually if you go to the PaperPot website, there's also a couple of resources. I think it says like Jang Resources or something like that. If it was better with the software, I could show you guys. I don't know. I don't have this set up right now. And there's a couple things. One is like just a whole bunch of like spacings and stuff for direct seeding. So it's on their website. It's like there's a drop down somewhere on the upper right there. I definitely recommend purchasing from them and also checking out the resources they have over there for that. Oh man, great question. I should reach out to hat companies because I destroy my hats. You guys probably seen me wearing straw hats all the time, and I do wear straw hats a lot. Just try to keep the sun off of me. Those are kind of my favorite because the big straw hats, because they breathe pretty well. So when you get warm, they allow some ventilation, but they also keep a lot of sun off of me. I like those the best. They get destroyed, as I mentioned. They're kind of fun when they get beat up, but that's what I've been using. It's a funny story about the hat thing. I had one that I wore all the time and it fell apart, and then everyone was complaining in videos I need a new hat. And then some viewers sent me some hats when I was at Raleigh City Farm. So one I just recently destroyed. One still is around. So that's my favorite for sure. I'm having issues with sticking in the soil bark and not popping up perfectly. Probably a moisture thing. Maybe you need to add a little bit more moisture. That's my guess. Play around with that. Usually I just pop it like twice and it comes right out. So I'm guessing you probably just need a little bit more moisture. Thanks, Pamela. "24-inch wide beds." I've never heard of someone asking about more narrow beds. Usually it's wider beds. So yeah, I mean, so you give up a couple things with a more narrow bed. You get less growing space in the same acreage because your walkways are probably going to be the same. So each bed is going to be, 30 to 24, whatever percentage that is. Also, it limits you to the kinds of crops that you're going to grow and the number of rows you can get in them. It will reduce the interplanting possibilities as well. I really do think 30 inches is about perfect for most people. And if you're physically like not able to do that straddle move, then like people were saying earlier, like knee pads and kneeling next to beds works really well too. And back to we were talking about Jesse with his interplanting and stuff. He'll like basically set up stuff so he can like harvest off of like he'll divide his 4-foot bed in half by the way he plants it. So he'll plant like one thing on 24 inches, one thing on 24 inches, and then he'll just be on either side harvesting. So he gets more diversity that way by interplanting. And sometimes he'll plant like if he'll be in a row, he'll have lettuce on both sides of him. So like hopefully I'm explaining this well. So if you're in a row, there'll be lettuce on both sides of them, but in the other parts of those beds, there'll be something different. So each of those beds will be interplanted, but for him, it's kind of like a 4-foot bed that he's in the middle of. So he'll just reach to the side of both sides and get lettuce, for example. I don't think he always does that, but that's one way to approach it too. So there are a lot of options out there. It's not just you. Also, like think about other people that might be working on your farm. So I'm not saying 24 inches is the right or the wrong size for you personally, but when we designed Raleigh City Farm, we purposely built wider walkways. We had 18-inch walkways, and I was used to 14-inch walkways, and I thought 14 was okay, but once we switched to 18, it was great because, or when we set up the farm, we put in 18-inch walkways because everyone could handle it. It was very comfortable for everybody. So think about the other people that are working there as well, or might work there in the future, because if you're setting up permanent beds, they're permanent. You don't want to be changing them over time. So consider that too. And we also consider that with like sort of the distance, like on the ends of the beds, we want to easily be able to turn around or have groups come in and do educational activities and stuff like that. So we left a lot more space than I would normally on a production farm, for sure. So I would say if I personally wouldn't recommend more narrow than 30. Also because a lot of the tools and stuff are designed for 30-inch beds. Not that you can't use different size beds, but I don't know. If it's just you, I don't know if you're a commercial farm or you're a gardener or what the story is. You can make anything work. There's no rules. Like you don't have to do like what I do. You don't have to do 30 inches by 50-foot beds. Like, you don't have to do any of this stuff. It's whatever makes sense for you. Just when you go off the path a little bit, there's just gonna be a little bit more. There's gonna be other workarounds you're gonna have to figure out in terms of stuff that's kind of standardized in the market garden world. That's the only thing I would say. And then reducing the amount of growing space. Two straws for, that's not bad. I'd say it's about right. Yes, these all stay up on YouTube. You can go back and look at my channel. They're all there automatically. Yep, you can watch all of them. Yeah, someone messaged me about like clothing and stuff. I don't have anything specific that I wear. A good pair of low top hiking boots and just like, you know, whatever. But yeah, a big hat. I do like a big hat. And I do wear gardening gloves fairly often. I didn't really talk about that before. I might as well talk about that. I got in the habit of wearing gloves because I was filming all the time, and I'd have filthy hands, and I'd go to grab my camera or turn the camera on or off, and I would just get my camera filthy, and I have expensive camera gear. So I started wearing gloves just because I could pull off the glove and then grab the camera or whatever. So that's kind of why I started that, and now I just kind of wear them if I'm doing soil work, but I don't know. You don't have to, but it's been nice that my hands aren't nearly as gross all the time when I'm not farming. All right, let's see here. What other questions does everybody have? Maybe people don't have questions because I'm on here every week. All right, I'll give you guys a couple more minutes to get some questions in. Let me let you know what's coming up with the course, as I like to let people know that so they know what to expect. So on Thursday will be transplanting and interplanting. Oh, sorry, that was the one we just had. There'll be direct seeding. Next week will be tools and supplies, and then we're over pest management, weed management. Break down my wash station, all the stuff that's going on in there. And then there'll be a module about harvesting, so how I harvest and wash and pack everything. And then the last one will be about some basic composting stuff. So we're definitely over the middle point here. But remember, all these modules will stay up and be accessible on YouTube. They're also available as a podcast, so you can get that over on the PaperPot website. It's on the Farm Small Farm Smart podcast. So you can also listen to, if you ever want to re-listen to any of the modules or the live Q&As, remember, you can just go to YouTube and click play, and you can just listen to it. I know I do that sometimes. If I'm just wanting to listen to something, you can always do that too. How do you label your starts? I put the date and expected transplant varieties. You keep things on a file. Okay, so excuse me. My farm is super simple. What I do is I just use a piece of painter's tape on the tray. I talked about this in the nursery management module, nursery management and seed starting, and I just write the date because the date that I started it, and that's because I only grow a couple things. So usually it's just lettuce and beets, and so I can tell which one's a lettuce and which one's a beet when it comes up. And so it's pretty easy for me. I don't write the transplant date because that changes a lot during the course of the year. So I just keep an eye on things, but I'll just, yeah, that's how I label them. And so I am not very great about record keeping, but what I do use is I have a whiteboard that's got every bed on it, and it's just like, it's laid out like the farm. There's a space for each crop, and I write down the date I transplant it, the day I either seed or transplant it out, and what it is. And that way I know, like, oh, that's taking too long, that's ready, blah, 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 and I can like look at the whole thing and keep track of it that way. So that's how I do that. But if you have a lot of stuff going on, or you're doing trials, definitely label it. I label everything with at least with a date for sure. I used to use those little like white, those little white pieces of plastic with the point on the end to shove in there, but I just use painter's tape. It works pretty well. I've been like trying to not get lazy, but I still been labeling them with the date. Hey, Cody. Thanks so much. Glad you're enjoying the course. Planted peppers in February, however, like 5 inches tall. I don't know where you are, Cody, but peppers take forever to grow. And especially in February, there's not much light. They're gonna take a long time that early in the season if you're in the northern hemisphere. So, yeah, they take a long time. As soon as the heat starts rolling, the peppers start growing pretty quickly. But they're a long-term crop. Most peppers take months and months and months. Awesome. Love growing peppers, though. Mice issues. The only mice issues I had was recently in my nursery, which I think I talked about in the nursery management module. They go after the bigger seeds, and I was always been told that if you have metal legs on your nursery tables, the mice can't climb them. We have metal legs on our nursery table, and they could climb them. So I don't know if it's a round versus a square thing. Like we were using fencing top rail for the legs, so that hasn't worked for us. And I didn't think we had a problem with it because I was just growing lettuce and beets mainly, and some kale and stuff like that. And the seeds are pretty small. But when I went to plant squash out, I noticed like within a few days, someone tore them all apart. So obviously there's mice around. So what I did was with those bigger seeds, I just used those little humidity dome things that like cover 110-20 tray because I had some. And I just used those until they germinated and they grew, and then I took them off. So I had to go and hand water them for the first few days till they germinated, but that was what I did. There are lots of options out there for mouse traps. I've seen ones with like buckets and stuff, and I don't know. You can go to war with all that. I don't have the experience to try to help you with that, but that's what I did. It got through the moment for sure, but they're around. I mean, mice are everywhere. We do have some voles too, which have been somewhat disruptive, but not to the point where I want to do something about it yet. My biggest pest is squirrels and the groundhog, which I've talked about before, and bunnies. Like those are my big pests that are coming in for sure, other than insects. It's all good. It's still like, even if you have the heat, you're gonna have low light levels. So give them some time. Whoa. Sorry, guys. Severe weather alert here. Hopefully it comes after the live stream, because I feel like the power always goes out when we get crazy storms. Like a tree falls on a power line somewhere. I don't live in like in a super rural area, but just far enough out where we lose power for stuff like that. Yeah, that's what I've been using just because I had them, and it was kind of like the humidity dome was kind of like I have them, and then I just put a little bit of weight on top of them. I used like a couple of clamps or something just to like, so they couldn't knock them over, because mice they're persistent little guys for sure. Just keep in mind it'll heat up the tray even faster, and if you're using an overhead system like I have, then you'll have to go in and hand water them. Yeah, we don't have a basement here. Yeah. Can you put regular topsoil in a compost setup? Sure. You can compost whatever you want. Sometimes that can be beneficial if you're trying to change up the mix, but I'm not sure it would be much benefit to add to the composting process. You might want to mix it in with finished compost if you're trying to put it out into a bed. Unless you're worried about there being weed seeds or something in there and your compost is hot enough, it might try to break it down, but There's probably not much to compost in the topsoil, so I don't know if I would necessarily add it to the mix while it's composting. So when I was going through the summer, how cool is your seed starting area to germinate the seeds? So I was germinating in my nursery, and it was too hot in there. They would germinate pretty good, but they'd sort of struggle in there because it was too hot. So I was going to have to make a change this year. I was probably going to add shade cloth to my nursery. And if that was still an issue, I would probably germinate them in my garage and then just put them out when after they germinated into the nursery. But yeah, probably shade cloth would probably be the thing for sure. Yeah, so I did have this problem with crops smothering others during interplanting. That was mainly user error and my experimentation when I was planting crops that got too big and sort of started growing on top of each other. So that can definitely happen. So make sure you... So yeah, so one thing with interplanting, which I mentioned in the module, was it sounds cool. It's a lot of fun. It's very nerdy. And it also, if you get kind of bored of doing the same thing over and over again, it gives you a little bit of spice to your farming style. So it's a little bit exciting and fun. Also, it looks super cool. But don't go crazy with it because you can lose both crops if you're not careful. And so a lot of the times that I had troubles with this was the density was too much. Like I was planting... I think in the interplant module, there was a couple of sections of B-roll where I was showing like lettuce and green onions, and I put like way too much in there. So I had dialed that back to be like, usually I do 4 rows of lettuce. I would do like maybe 3 rows of lettuce and 2 rows of green onion, that sort of thing. A lot of times it'll come down to the timing, which I talked about too. So like if you need something to be a little bit further ahead when it goes out into the ground, like make sure you start that earlier in the nursery. So that can change. And as I said, this is experimental until you dial in your systems for sure. And that was why it was great because like with green onions and lettuce, the onions grow pretty much straight up. So even when they do, they don't really shade out the lettuce so much. It does make transplanting a little tricky. And also when you're pulling out the lettuce, then the soil kind of gets on, when you're pulling out the onions, the soil can get on the lettuce. So, excuse me, there are definitely trade-offs with a lot of the stuff, but with the taller crops, I didn't really have that issue, like the peppers and beets, cucumbers and lettuce, that worked out fine. Hey, Marty, does the greenswater knock off aphids or on kale or lettuce? Yes, to some extent. If you have a very covered plant, it will still struggle with that. But one thing I recommend, if you do have if the plants are still okay, like they're not damaged and you still think you can sell them and you have some bugs on there, a couple things with the greens bubbler, which I will talk about eventually, but I might as well talk about it now. Make sure that you don't put too much material, too many greens in the bubbler, so there's a lot of room to like have everything move around. Because if you put too much in there, it kind of just bubbles and doesn't move. And I have that habit where I just keep dumping bins in. I'm like, oh my God, there's too many pounds of lettuce in here. So make sure it has room to move around. And then also change the water frequently, because if you have some plants that you're washing in there that have a lot of bugs on them, after you put in a load of greens and you bubble it, like the water's gonna be full of it too. So make sure you're draining the tank and rinsing things out really well between batches, and you have to do that more frequently. Same thing as if you are harvesting anything that's got a lot of soil on it or bugs or whatever, like make sure that you're changing out your water frequently. Like for me, it's winding down now, but we have horrible pollen, like pine pollen here, where everything's just covered in green for like a month or two. And so during that time period, like the crops are great, but when I go to wash them, like the water just turns green after I dump the lettuce in. So again, I'm frequently like dumping the water, rinsing it out really well, and refilling it more often than I would, let's say, like in the middle of the winter time or, whenever else things are clean. And I think whenever you can do to reduce the amount of cleaning you have to do is also very beneficial. So again, like I said, growing in a tunnel, the crops stay a lot cleaner. Growing on landscape fabric will keep the crops a lot cleaner. I know that, like Ray Tyler, for example, which most of you guys probably know, at Rose Creek Farm, they actually, last time I talked to Ray, he was using landscape fabric under his stuff in the tunnels. And I asked him why, and he said it's even cleaner when you do that. And for someone like Ray and his farm, they're processing so many veggies in a week that if they can save like 20% time on washing, like it's worth it for them. And they said they took it out, and I think at the time his wife was kind of running the harvesting facility or the washing facility, and she started complaining. She's like, "No, it's dirtier. Like it's taking us longer to clean it." So whatever you can do to sort of keep it cleaner on the field will definitely save more time in the wash station, because that is definitely the bottleneck, and where you spend a lot of time is just in washing, drying, packaging veggies. So again, whatever you can do to do that, I think is important. Long answer to your question, Marty. You're welcome, Washington guy. Hey, Blake. You're very welcome. I have to say, this has been really cool. I don't know if I feel like I'm teaching a course, like, because, you know, I used to teach high school, but at least it's like every week. Feels good. All right. Beets. They're about 3 or 4 weeks in the nursery before they go out. I'd say that's probably about how long they take. But, uh-oh. Power is flickering. Hope I don't lose you guys. Oh boy, I hear my UPS clicking on off. Are we still working here? Looks like we are. My light's still on. Oh man. All right. If I lose you guys, I apologize. So beets are pretty quick to germinate and to grow. Like they grow pretty quickly at the beginning. So make sure you have lights on them, and make sure if you're growing inside, make sure the lights are really close to the tops of the trays so that they have enough light, because they do get leggy really easily. They germinate pretty quickly, usually within a few days. If the leaves are taking a long time to start, then maybe you don't have enough light, I'm guessing. It's either light, moisture, or temperature. Those are kind of the three things. So I'm not doing any herbs. I thought about growing herbs in grow bags in my nursery because I've seen that before and it was super cool and I have tons of space in there. I wanted to do herbs and edible flowers. That was sort of a stretch goal for me, which I was like, I would be cool, but I had too much on my plate. I also reached out to my chefs and they just weren't interested in herbs. I asked them and they were like, nah, we just don't use that many and we just buy them from, they weren't really interested. So that was just my market, right? Doesn't mean that would be different for you. But I was inspired by Sage Hill Ranch Gardens when I was out there. Spencer Rudolph, and he was doing tons of edible flowers and grow bags in his nursery with his starts and his microgreens, and it was just killing it with all these like Michelin star. Was that what Michelin star is that what it's called? The fancy restaurants, and selling all those kinds of things. So my market didn't want it, but again, it could be something that would work in the future. Yeah. I don't hand pollinate my cucumbers because my tunnels are open and I plant stuff around the farm to try to attract pollinators and beneficial insects as much as possible. I haven't had any trouble with it. Everything kind of works out. The tunnels aren't closed up, so there's always bugs in there. In fact, we were working on the hedgerow today and cleaning it up. We just planted out a new hedgerow this spring, so very, very cool. All right, we'll take some last questions before I lose power. Hope I don't. I hear the storm rolling outside. Do you have any last questions, or we want to wrap up for the week? Next week, or on Thursday, we'll get the direct seeding module, and then we'll get on to tools and supplies. And again, if you're just tuning in, Paywall Co., the sponsor of this entire course, all doing a giveaway for several Jang seeders. So there's a link down below to go check out all the details for the giveaway. So make sure you guys do that. All right, maybe this will wrap it up today. Well, thanks for coming today. And as usual, all this stays up on YouTube for you to check out. And all of the modules will also be up there for everyone to check out. Last question. Mokum, that's the carrot that I like to grow. There's a lot of options out there. That one kind of seems like the standard. So thanks again for coming, everybody. We'll see you. Well, you'll hopefully see me on Thursday morning with the next module, and we'll see you next Monday. Thanks again.